I was the one that was tossing the bells up to my brother. Yeah. He was riding. My daddy had the truck going down.
Can you see me?
Yeah, I had to do the work, man. Yeah. He just had the place stacked. Yeah, man.
Come in.
One of the worst punishments I had, bro. I was 11th grade.
How about this?
No, that physical activity is worse than getting ass.
I need to be able to see my notes.
Right.
Am I too far now? I need to get closer.
Do I stink or something?
No, it's just hot.
It's hot.
It ain't gonna be hot in here. We'll do this. Phingaprint got the cooties.
No, I don't.
Cooties.
I ain't out here no more. I got over with it. Hey, I'm here. I don't have a cup. Gerold needs one. You need two.
Really?
Yeah.
I already had one.
Oh, okay.
Well, your two and me and Bottlepopper done killed 3 already. What's up? You got to do them bike to bike. And you got to do one extra for Trent because he don't drink tequila.
I only had 2.
You got bourbon, don't you?
I'm out.
He drank it all.
Shit. Like I'm with Kelvin them. You know? Yeah.
Yeah, tequila don't agree with me.
Yeah,
No.
well,
You get it? You like a donkey?
But it's just kind of, tequila is one of the few things I feel the next morning.
okay.
No, like bourbon, as long as I get about 5 good hours of sleep, I'm all right.
Right.
That tequila is going to be sitting on me the next morning.
Damn. Oh, it's the 748 podcast on the Urban City Podcasting Network. Gerold Girbeau, Bottlepopper, DJ Phingaprint in the building.
We in
Hey,
the
man,
house.
if you haven't already, like, click, and subscribe. And, hit that notification button so you'll know every time we put out a podcast.
Yes.
And it's more than the 748 podcast on the Urban City Podcasting Network. We got plenty of content, man. Go and check out all of it. All right? How you feeling, Bottlepopper?
I feel good.
All right, how you feeling, Phingaprint?
I feel good. Good, definitely. Man.
In your James Brown voice, right? Yeah. So today we got a special guest in the building,
very
Mr.
special
Trent
guest.
Walker,
Mr. Trent Walker.
the lawyer of what is it called, the Goon Squad case, right here in the state of Mississippi.
Yeah, that's the latest moniker.
Okay. Who coined that term?
They
did.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what they called themselves.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Police officers gave themselves that name.
Yes.
Oh.
So if you don't know what we're talking about, you've been in the dark for one. But we are talking about a case that happened over in Brandon, Mississippi, where was it Braxton? Okay, I thought it was a subdivision of Brandon. My bad.
No, they're not really
It's
close.
still
They're not
stankin'
really
ranking.
close?
It's still in Rankin.
It's
still
stankin'
Rankin
ranking.
County.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about the case where the 2 young men were beaten and tortured. Yeah, it was a whole bunch.
Almost sodomized.
By police officers.
Rankin County deputies linked to the alleged torture of 2 men at a Braxton home have been terminated. 12 News' Leah Williams has reaction from the Rankin County Sheriff and an attorney representing the 2 men.
A group of Rankin County deputies allegedly abused Eddie Parker and Michael Corey Jenkins at Parker's home in Braxton on January 24th.
And Mr. Trent Walker is here to tell us more about this.
All right. Let's get to it then, bro.
Okay.
So tell us from the beginning what you know as the attorney for the 2 young men that all of this assault happened to.
Yes, what happened?
Well, to be complete and yet as succinct as possible, on the night of January 24th of 2023, Eddie Parker and Michael Jenkins were at a house in Braxton, Mississippi. Eddie stayed at the house permanently because the young lady who owned the house was paralyzed.
Okay.
And Eddie stayed at the house as her caretaker.
Okay.
They had known each other a long time, and so he was just kind of making sure that she was taken care of. So they were not in any sort of romantic relationship of any sort. However, one of the 6 officers in question lived about a mile away. One of his neighbors complained to him that there were black men staying at the house and they were acting suspiciously, whatever that's supposed to mean. So that officer was Brett McAlpin. He lived maybe about a mile away.
Okay.
So one of the neighbors complained to him. He then basically got in touch with Christian Dedman, who is another officer, who was a narcotics officer, and told him to take care of it. All right. So Dedman then texted the remaining officers, being Hunter Elward, who we can get as deep into as you want. Then there was Daniel Updike, and finally there was Josh Hartfield, who was actually a member of the Richland Police Department.
Okay.
But when the time came to make a move, apparently he and Dedman were hanging out, so he came along for the ride. There were text messages that, hey, we don't need any no bad mug shots, which basically meant you can beat them anywhere except in the face.
Okay.
So nothing that's going to show up on a mugshot.
Wow.
And also that they were going to be on the lookout for cameras. If you see cameras, you got to go in easy. If you don't see any cameras, hey, just bust your way in.
Oh, wow.
So there happened to actually be a surveillance camera that covered the front door. They saw that, so they went to the garage door, and Hunter Elward, who goes, I don't know exactly, but about 6'4", 260, 270.
Oh, wow.
He's a big guy.
Okay.
And so a couple of guys tried to kick the door in. They were unsuccessful. He kicked the door in. They came through there. Somebody came through the back door. They come in. Immediately took both Eddie Parker and Michael Jenkins into custody, put them into handcuffs.
Wow.
And proceeded to begin to torture them. First, they started beating them, kicked them in the ribs, hitting them with objects. They got like a wooden utensil out of the kitchen. Somehow or another, there was a metal sword. They beat them with the flat part of the sword.
Yeah.
And then Dedman takes out his revolver and, also began immediately tasing them.
Oh, wow.
Even though they were already handcuffed.
So this was no questions asked, none of that.
They went there for the purpose of torturing them.
So
that was their whole purpose for entry.
And in earlier news, they were saying that they were coming there because there was talk of drug,
yeah.
That was the cover story.
That's the setup.
That was the setup.
Right.
So they came in. Dedman pulls out his gun and says, "Where's the drugs? Where's the drugs?" There's no drugs.
Right.
So Dedman actually fires a bullet into the wall, trying to make, scare them into telling him where in the house the drugs were.
Yeah.
Again, there were no drugs.
Right.
So at this point, they're tasing them, they're beating them, they calling them the N-word, calling them monkeys, calling them boy, telling them to get back to their side of the Pearl River and stay out of Rankin County. All these things are documented. Everything I'm saying to you now, all 6 of them have admitted to in open court twice. They did it in federal court, and then they did it again on the 13th of this month in Rankin County Circuit Court.
Okay.
So I'm not saying what I heard.
Yeah.
I'm saying what they said is true.
Right.
So at that point in time, so they began to waterboard them. They're already tasing them. They're already tasing them. Have tased them a bunch of times. And I want to point out, every last one of them either never activated their body cams or turned them off.
Now, just to interrupt you for a minute. Going back to the young lady who was in the house.
Yes.
Now, there were rumors that there was a white female involved.
Yeah, she lives there.
So she is the
Right.
white female.
So,
But
yeah,
she
'cause
wasn't
that's
there.
where I
She
she
was
wasn't there.
hospitalized.
Okay.
She was hospitalized.
So really, they kind of came there because they were living with this white lady.
They came there, yeah, in short.
In short,
In short.
pretty much.
Yeah, I was going to ask that question.
Yeah, I just had to get it out.
Yeah, that's where I was going
So
to.
yeah, you know, it's like, you know, y'all taking advantage of, you know, the white woman that lives here.
Yeah.
So that's what
y'all
it looks
dating
like.
white
Yeah.
women.
Yeah.
Well, the fact that they're with a white woman right there, you know, they're
Yeah.
black man.
Yeah,
you
the
know,
house
that's-
belonged to her.
Okay.
Okay.
But again, you know, Eddie Parker is there as a caretaker.
Yeah.
Because she's been paralyzed basically since she was a teenager.
Okay.
Okay. Now,
So-
how old are these young men?
Eddie's 35, Michael's 32.
Wow.
Okay. And how old were the officers involved?
Anywhere from their mid-20s. The oldest officer, I know McAlpin, I believe, was 52. I think Middleton was somewhere around that same age. I don't know exactly, but early 50s, let's just say.
Okay.
So I think Dedman and Updike, if I recall correctly, are 28, and I think Elward's in his early 30s.
Okay.
So where everything is at that point in time, now they've gone around and going in the house. They took milk out of the refrigerator. They waterboarded them with the milk. They found Hershey's chocolate syrup, trying to pour that all over them down their throats. They found grease out of the kitchen because Eddie had just finished cooking.
Oh, wow.
So the grease wasn't hot.
It was still warm.
But it was still warm.
Right.
And, you know, waterboarded them with that. Kicked in the door to another room. They found liquor in there, poured the liquor down their throat. And on this side, you know, they handcuffed and laying on their backs. So did all that. Somebody found a 2x4, was beating them with 2x4s. So after they've done that, they got them all messy. Went in the refrigerator, got eggs, throwing eggs and just pelting them with the eggs. This is on top of, like I said, you know, the beating and kicking that they're doing anyway.
Right.
So then they decide, okay, well, we got to get y'all cleaned up. So now you force two grown men. Well, no, I skipped it. When they kicked in the door and found the liquor, they also found the dildo in the room.
That's what I was about to ask.
Snap. Right.
Okay.
So is it true that they sodomized one of the men?
Not exactly.
Not exactly.
Okay. Here's what happened with the dildo is they beat him about the head. They found a broken BB gun. They mounted the dildo onto the end of the BB gun. So they beating him about the face. About the face. They forced the dildo into the mouth of one of them. Tried to force the dildo into the mouth of the other one. So then they turned Michael over to attempt to anally sodomize him. However, they had tased him so many times that he had soiled himself.
Wow.
Okay.
And that was the only reason that did not happen. So then they made them shower. You got two grown men. You've already done this with the dildo.
Yeah.
And you make them shower all the stuff you've been pouring all over and down their throats. Made them shower to wash all that off. So you got two grown men showering
This
at the same
took
time.
a long time.
And made them put on fresh clothes. When they got the fresh clothes, then they began the taser contest. Because, see, Joshua Hartfield worked for the Richland Police Department, and everybody else worked for the Rankin County Police Department. So 2 or 3 of them began a contest of whose taser is the strongest.
Wow.
And they just gratuitously tased them and making fun of them, saying whose taser is the strongest, his or mine, and did that continuously. You know, we got taser records fairly early on. There were 6 pages of taser records where they had used those tasers over a 1-hour period.
Wow. So you have to. So every time a taser is released, that's record.
There's a recording of
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I know.
So there was a record of that 6 pages long. So then moving beyond that, then they had them on their knees in one of the rooms. The officers stole stuff out of the house. I'm not really sure what a Barmatic kind of reminds me of the rubber thing that people put to use.
Okay, yeah.
But saw that, took that out to their own vehicles for their personal use. So they stealing out of the house.
Wow.
What we also found out is that because the lady that owned the house is actually in a wheelchair, they going in the freezer, taking meat out of the freezer and throwing it in the cabinets up too high for her to find.
Wow.
So it'll melt and, thaw out and rot.
Yeah.
So then Elwood, and we can get into Elwood a little bit more in a second, but Elwood actually takes his service weapon and he palms the bullet that's in the chamber and puts it in Michael Jenkins' mouth and dry fires. Then racks the slide, which of course you would think, as much as these people handle weapons, would know, puts another bullet into the chamber.
Right.
And he put it into his mouth again and fired again. Instead of dry firing, he shot him in the mouth.
Wow.
So basically that splits his tongue to where it's holding on by a thread.
Wow.
And the bullet comes in, entry wound inside the mouth, splits the tongue and exits out the jaw. So if he'd have had that gun at a different angle, he would have blew the back of his head off.
Wow.
So at this point in time, now Michael's laying on the ground bleeding out. You think they called an ambulance?
No.
No. He went and told everybody he messed up, and then they got together to get their lies straight rather than calling an ambulance of any sort. So then they went trying to pick up shells from the guns that they had fired, came up with a cover story about they came up, got consent to search, and found drugs on Michael Jenkins. That was a lie. There were no drugs present.
Right.
So Christian Dedman, he just happened to have some methamphetamine in his vehicle
Just so
that he was supposed to have turned into evidence. He had gotten off a CI or whatever the case may be, didn't turn that in. He went and got that, and that's what they then turned in and filed a report saying that they had found that methamphetamine on Michael Jenkins, and he was charged with felony possession of methamphetamine.
Wow.
Then the second part of the cover story was that once they got it, he took off into the house running. They chased him in the house. That's how everybody ended up in the house, that they were supposed to have taken Michael into a side room to set up a controlled drug buy. And Michael went for, of all things, the BB gun. The original story was supposed to be Michael went for a gun, and that's how he got shot. Wow. Because Elwood pulled the gun and shot him when he went for a gun.
Okay.
When they were supposed to be doing a controlled drug buy. But then, by this time, Middleton, and you got to understand, Middleton is the shift supervisor. He is the person who came up. Well, let me rephrase. He is the leader of the quote unquote goon squad. And so Middleton keeps a drop gun in his car for the purpose of planting it if necessary.
Wow.
So yeah, go ahead.
He was like, hey, I got a gun in my car. We can just say he went and pulled this gun. Well, no, they decided to use the BB gun that they had put the dildo on. So, of course, that makes the story less believable. He went for the BB gun and therefore I had to shoot him.
So what would be the standard to be successful in a legal case like this? What do you see?
When you mean lawsuit was?
Yeah.
Well, the standard is it more probable than not that the officers did what we accused them of, which I want to point out, we never accused them of planting drugs or of planting the gun, although, it's pretty clear there were no drugs present. But, the important thing to note in this particular case, Michael was charged with felony assault on a police officer, which carries a sentence of 0 to 30.
Okay.
All right. Also, in addition to the felony drug possession, which would have carried a sentence of 0 to 8. So it is at least theoretically possible that he could have been sentenced to 38 years for something
he didn't even do.
That he didn't do.
Right.
And that they were just straight up lying about to cover their own behinds.
So how long did this whole ordeal take for Michael and Eddie? How
Between
long
an
were
hour
they
and a
there?
half and 2 hours.
Wow.
Okay.
Jeez.
Wow.
And so, they're going through all that. They take Eddie outside And part of the cover story was Eddie was outside, and they tried to clear with Eddie. Here's what you're going to say. If you say this, we make sure that you don't go to jail. And they took him in, charged him with some misdemeanors, and they released him on his own recognizance. He left the jail walking the next morning. But to his credit, he then basically made a contemporaneous recording of what happened. And, you know, he told his family, and that's how everything got reported. Okay. And, you know, just kind of fast forward about 3 weeks, and, you know, I was asked to participate on the case with my good brother Malik Shabazz, who is a civil rights attorney in Washington, D.C. We were working together on the Emmett Till matter. We had filed the lawsuit. I had been asked to help work with him on a lawsuit to arrest Carolyn Bryant, to force the sheriff of LaFleur County to arrest Carolyn Bryant for the arrest warrant that had been issued against her in 1955 and never executed. Right. So we kind of knew that was probably a long shot. Right. Yeah. But, you know.
But you tried it. You tried it.
Yeah, you know, we gave it a shot. Yeah. And so, of course, no sooner than we filed that, then Carolyn Bryant died. Yeah. So that made that case moot. Yeah. You know, but at the same time, he was like, hey, you know, I got this other case I want you to work with me on. Right. And it turns out to be this particular case. Okay. So that's kind of how I got involved. They actually had gotten in touch with him through people that they all knew mutually. Oh yeah, and that's where it grew from there. From there, really, you know, we tried to bring attention to it. We had a press conference on the day after Michael was released from intensive care, and you got to realize, you know, his family. He went to the hospital, right? But they had a Rankin County deputy in the hospital with him at all times. So you got to think that, you know, at any time when he might wake up, the same, you know, not the same officer, but somebody from the same department is, you know, sitting up there looking at him. He's, you know, handcuffed or what have you. His family, they wouldn't give his family information with regard to him. He was in the hospital under an alias. They wouldn't give his family information. His mother and father didn't know if he was alive or dead at first. And when they were finally able to get information, they were just, you know, spoken to very rudely. The Rankin County Sheriff's Department told them that he was their property. Wow. And that his family could have access to him when they let them have access to him. Oh. And the only thing that broke that up was the doctors finally had to contact them directly because when he got shot, they hit an artery. And so the doctors were like, you know, we need to know what's he allergic to. We need to make sure that our protocol is satisfied, you know, because we're trying to do these surgeries and so forth. Right. So, so that was kind of the breakthrough on that. But the family, you know, because these charges have been placed, even though he was in the hospital, in order to get access to him and to get these officers out of the room, they had to pay a $50,000 bond. Wow. So, you know, basically,
so they were really trying to cover all of this.
They filed false reports, made false charges, turned in the drugs they claimed they found, turned those into evidence as having belonged to him when they were planted. Right. You know, all of this, they did all that in order to cover themselves.
So this goon squad, they were Rankin County police, not
These
city
were
police.
Rankin County Sheriff's deputies. And they went by the name the Goon Squad.
So did the sheriff not know anything?
Of course he knew.
Right. Because I saw a news.
Now pretends.
Wait a minute. Is this the one that is always getting called hoghead bastard?
That Stokes did.
That Stokes guy.
No.
I can't speak to that. I do know he and Stokes don't have a good, friendly relationship.
He's the hoghead.
So the officer Josh, he was from Richland. Why was he even involved? And was that legal for him to be involved in that?
Well, none of this was legal.
Well, I'm saying for him to be a Richland officer with the Rankin County I know it's all Rankin County, but was he a county officer? Is what I'm asking.
He was not an employee of the Rankin County Sheriff's Department.
Right.
He was an employee of the Richland Sheriff's Department. The issue in this particular case, apparently, he was chilling out in the backyard with Christian Dedman.
Okay.
All right. And just by way of history, what you also have to know, Christian Dedman is the first cousin of Gerold Dedman. Gerold Dedman is the driver of the vehicle that ran over James Anderson, I think is his name.
Yeah, back
Ellis
some years
Avenue,
ago.
about 10
Yeah.
or 12 years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
Where the white kids
Wow,
got into the,
Yeah, I remember
they
that.
came from Rankin County.
And they were in addition, and then they got out. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and this man was walking down the street minding his own business, and they ran him over. Gerold Dedman was driving. Mm-hmm. So apparently, Daryl and Christian are cousins. Jackson Jambalaya website actually posted a picture at Gerold Dedman's sentencing of Christian Dedman, who was 17 years old at the time, sitting in the courtroom on the date of sentencing.
Oh, wow.
So basically, that's that.
Is this going to lead to other officers being convicted or indicted or anything?
Yeah,
I cannot really answer that question.
Okay.
What I will say is this clearly is not limited to those 6 officers.
Yeah.
What's going to happen to anybody else, I'm not in a position to say.
Has the DOJ been involved in this?
Well, we can come to that.
Okay.
All right. So the short answer to your question is absolutely.
Okay.
What we were able to find out, we were in contact with DOJ, including Kristen Clark, who is the chief of the Civil Rights Division out of D.C. Okay. So we were in contact with them. They were part and parcel of the investigation. And also I want to say for the record that the state of Mississippi, the Attorney General's office, of course, Lynn Fitch is the Attorney General.
Right.
Because a lot of people are like, she didn't do this, that, or the other. But what had happened?
Was she assertive when it came to this?
Well, what happened is that she had embedded a Deputy Attorney General with the U.S. Attorney. So it's kind of a joint investigation, joint operation going the whole time. Okay. So it is not true that the state of Mississippi wasn't doing anything. Okay. All right. So, we just want to be clear about that. But where everything stands, to go back to your question, DOJ had gotten involved. We got a call 2 or 3 days ahead of time saying, hey, we really need you all to be down here on, I believe it was Thursday or what have you. Mm-hmm. And so at this point in time, because of threats and some other things, we had actually removed Michael and Eddie.
Yeah, I was wondering if they were safe now in the family.
Well, they are at this point, but yeah, there have been some threats that have been made. So, we just kind of like, what? Change of environment is what needs to happen. Right. And so they were not able to come down, but I was there. And so we come in and they announced that, hey, these guys are going to, because, I've been practicing law right at, 27 years, not right at, but I've been practicing law 27 years. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so I know how things operate. When they came in, they said there's going to be a court proceeding. I'm saying to myself, all right, they're going to arraign these guys. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a perp walk, the whole nine, and so forth. That's what I'm thinking. What we did not know is that they had already negotiated guilty pleas to an assortment of 13 different federal counts.
Okay.
Then what we further did not know was that in addition to our case, there was an entirely separate case involving 3 out of the 6 of them that had where they had beaten a man on the side of the road, white man as I understand it, on the side of the road 6 weeks prior.
Jeez.
And they 3 out of the 6 entered guilty pleas to that case also. Okay. So what it demonstrates is certainly a consistent history involving these officers. And I continually get phone calls and contact. We get letters from prison, basically. People who
I
are
was
saying,
going to ask that.
Yeah, people have been contacting
because a lot of
saying,
cases,
hey,
they probably did this to a lot of people.
It would appear that would appear to be the case.
So them pleading guilty, does that lighten the sentencing or the punishment?
Well, to some, criminally speaking, usually you're going to get a break for not putting the system through the time and expense of having to go all the way through a trial. Mm-hmm. So you're going to get a break. Certainly with regard to the charges that were filed in state court, that does appear to be the case. Because as a practicing criminal lawyer, what I will say to you, that if you are involved in a joint enterprise with another person or with other people, everybody is equally responsible for anything that goes wrong. As for instance, if me and Phingaprint break into a house and I shoot the homeowner, Phingaprint might not have had any.
He's an accessory,
that's conspiracy, right?
Well, number one, it's certainly conspiracy to break into the house.
Right.
But having said that, even if it was just my idea, me acting alone to shoot the homeowner, Phingaprint's gonna get charged with shooting the homeowner too.
Yeah.
Okay. Aggravated assault, the homeowner dies. Me and Phingaprint are both gonna be charged with murder, even though he's gonna be sitting up screaming, "Hey, I didn't know that dude was gonna go that far."
Right,
Yeah.
right.
He's still gonna get charged with that.
Right.
And so, what happened in this case with regard to the state charges, they mostly pled to obstruction charges, a conspiracy to hinder prosecution. There was also, as to Elward and as to Christian Dedman, there were additional charges in state court because they entered a separate plea in the Rankin County Circuit Court on the 14th of this month.
Okay.
But there were separate charges in that case of home invasion as well as aggravated assault as to those two. However, you had some people, one of whom was, Brett McAlpin, who was also, number one, was the chief investigator for the Rankin County Sheriff's Department.
Okay.
And he was the person who made the call to, hey, take care of this. So, you the ringleader.
He got to clear
So
himself. Yeah.
he ended up with one of the lighter sentences in state court. But, one of the things that we're trying to do is to certainly let the public know to please do what you can to contact the judge, because Rankin County does not have the reputation as being a place
Fair.
where fair is not necessarily going to be the word that I use, but it's not the place where you can always expect mercy as a civilian.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so,
And that's on black or the white side, perhaps, or just on the black side?
that goes all the way around.
Okay.
And so, what I would tell the viewing public, please feel free to write the judge. Please feel free to contact in this case, it's the Attorney General's office, and not the Rankin County not the Rankin County District Attorney.
Okay.
But feel free to write the Attorney General and feel free to write the judge, and say, look, show these people as much mercy as they've been showing everybody else the whole time they've been patrolling these streets, which is next to none. Because, they didn't get charged with kidnapping, which they probably should have, all six of them. All six of them probably should have been charged with aggravated assault. Yeah. All six of them probably, and nobody got charged with sexual assault. At least in state court, even though, it's a part of the fact pattern that they agreed that this is what happened. Because the judge specifically said, do you dispute any of this? And all six of them said no.
Wow.
Okay? So everything I'm saying ain't just Trent Walker saying it.
Right.
It's not just Malik Shabazz saying it.
So do they have
this
an
is
attitude?
what they said. They admitted to.
Okay.
So do they have the attitude like they're not going to get that much time or not get any?
If I were them, I wouldn't have an attitude at all.
Yeah.
There is no chance that they're not going to get any time.
Okay.
There were recommendations when they entered their state court plea. There were recommendations as to what they would receive. However, no sentences were handed down on August 14th.
Okay.
And it is the norm in federal court when you enter a plea, your sentencing is usually 3 months down the road anyway. Okay. So in federal court, they're scheduled to be sentenced around November 14th. And from what I've been told, their state court sentencing will be around the same time, probably subsequent to their taking the federal pleas. There is the expectation that they will receive concurrent and not consecutive time, with the exception that Elward and Dedman, because they use firearms, have mandatory consecutive sentences, that each of those mandatory sentences are 10 to life in federal court. Okay. So there is that, but I do want to point out a couple other things. Number one, Malik Shabazz and myself also represent, as well as a brother named Katouche Body.
I know Katouche.
That's my old classmate, man.
Okay.
We know Katouche.
Yeah.
Well, the three of us additionally represent a lady by the name of Monica Lee. Monica Lee, her son Damian Cameron, was killed July 26th of 2021 by Hunter Elward, and there was another officer on the scene by the name of Luke Stickman.
Okay.
And so we represent her. So you have another situation where Hunter Elward was involved, admits in his own report to basically beating Damian Cameron. If you've seen pictures of Damian Cameron, he's in a neck brace and, black eye swollen shut, bleeding. And it came out in the New York Times and the Mississippi Today. They did a joint investigation, talked to 3 independent forensic pathologists, and they believe that that basically between the beating and kneeling on his neck, a la George Floyd, that's what killed Damian Cameron.
Okay, gotcha.
And so, you're again talking about, and by the way, she's from Braxton. That occurred in Braxton.
Wow.
So you're talking about one of the same officers.
Round 2 for him.
Involved in that. Had been sued multiple times for his involvement. You go back to 2019, there's a shooting in Pelahatchie, which is also in Rankin County, Mississippi, where Brian Bailey himself was on the scene of this shooting, and Judge Henry Wingate denied allowing him to get out of the lawsuit that was brought. But there was a young man by the name of Pierre Woods, mentally challenged, and Pierre Woods, and I have video of this on my phone.
Wow.
But Pierre Woods set foot, he was kind of basically holed up in a house out in Pelahatchie. He set foot outside of his front door, and probably before he could take a whole step, they shot him 50 or 60 times. He's laying on the ground. Hunter Elward admitted to shooting at him at least 8 times.
Jeez. So let me ask you this. I want you to explain 1983 cases and what kind of facts and damages are you seeking from that, and explain that to our audience.
Okay. A 1983 case is, in common parlance, an excessive force or civil rights violation. So basically, the police are allowed to, within bounds, exercise reasonable force in taking people into custody. They're allowed to exercise reasonable force. However, 1983 is the terminology we use when we say that that the police or law enforcement has used excessive force. So in the Jenkins and Parker case, it's very obvious that we're, number one, you didn't even have a warrant to go to the house at all. Right. You literally went into the house, kicked the door in, and I forgot to mention, stole the home surveillance system hard drive and threw it in a creek.
Wow.
So
how did y'all recover that?
We didn't.
Okay.
No. Once the dominoes started falling, a whole bunch of details started coming out, but they admitted in open court that that there was a surveillance system at the house. They stole that and threw it in a creek. Just like I said, they stole stuff that, belonged to the homeowner.
Right.
They stole those things, but they took that surveillance system and threw it in the creek.
With the revelation of all of this, do you think that they would, I'm trying to get my words together because it was on my mind. Do you think that they are going to get convicted for any of it? So they've been convicted.
They pled guilty.
Okay.
They pled guilty without ever having been indicted.
Okay, but is the
so
federal
if you're asking
government
about time?
Now I'm wondering if the federal government or the DOJ is going to do an investigation on the Rankin County Police Department.
I'm not in a position to answer that, but I would be surprised if it does not happen.
Because all this stuff is going on with the same people. You would think there would be an investigation into the whole sheriff's department.
Yeah, again, I'd be shocked if that was not ongoing.
Okay.
So I can't answer it because what I can tell you, the same way I walked into the building and didn't know that there were about to be some guilty pleas in it, the feds will give you the exact amount of information that they are forced to give you.
Okay.
They won't tell you anything else.
Okay.
So if they need something, they will ask you for what they need. If you ask them why they need it, they will not tell you.
Okay.
So okay, a lot of cases like this get thrown out. Why do you think this was put on Front Street?
Number one, there was never going to be a feasible reason to explain their being at the house in particular without a warrant. Okay. Because if you don't have a warrant, you have to have what's called exigent circumstances. In other words, there has to be an emergency that empowers me to enter this house without a warrant. And they didn't have it in that case. It's our contention they didn't have it in the Damian Cameron case either. So when you don't have a warrant, you don't have exigent circumstances, you don't have a reason to be there. And so that's the first problem.
Which makes me wonder, because they were there, they made them do all these things, and it seems kind of morbid, but I'm wondering why they just didn't kill him.
That wasn't the original game plan.
That wasn't the plan.
And at some point in time,
because I'm thinking, they could have killed those guys and they made up their own story.
They could have. Thank the Lord they didn't.
Yeah.
If we're being honest, but for Michael Jenkins living through this ordeal, it would have been pretty easy to sweep this under the rug.
Wow.
Okay. And what is apparent to me is, things have been getting swept under the rug
for a
very long time. Yeah. Now, with this, and you said earlier that you had another case pending.
That's correct.
Since all of this has happened, have you been getting flooded with calls to do these kind of civil cases?
Flooded is a very good word, and we're having to, sort through. Sometimes, due to the amount of time that has passed, is not viable because statute of limitations for bringing a case has done. But having said that, I've been encouraging people to contact DOJ, to contact the FBI tip line.
Right.
And
because I saw another young man on the news saying that one of the officers had did something to him.
Yes, right. That's right. And so, we've had that, people pretty consistently calling, and we're trying to see, okay, what is there that we can do for those cases versus what we really don't have a choice but to pass on.
Okay.
And so, we get pretty consistent contact ever since, this, because I'm going to tell you, there was a state of disbelief because if you listen to everything I've said, it's a pretty wild story.
Right.
It is a wild story. The rumors were even worse, And
so there was a state of disbelief. You had a lot of people, and I was at a meeting where, somebody said, how do we even know that this really happened? But there was a tendency to maybe, we'll wait and see on this until these officers got fired. At the point in time where they got fired, that's when people really started taking this story seriously. That happened in June. And that's
a few months back.
Yeah.
A few months back.
This is August. That happened in June. So between June when they got fired and today's August 24th, everything moved pretty quickly. In July, they entered guilty pleas in federal court, and in August, they entered guilty pleas in state court.
All right. So in your 27 years practicing and your knowledge, what's the biggest settlement or biggest verdict you've ever seen in a situation like this? Or is this a first for you?
First of all, I want to say that to my knowledge, in the state of Mississippi, no white officer has been held accountable in the criminal realm. There might have been some civil verdicts, but there's not been a white officer, to my knowledge, held accountable criminally for beating or excessive force applied against a black person. So this is historic for that reason. And if I'm wrong, nobody's corrected me yet.
Okay.
So before we get out of here, what advice would you have for someone who has went through this, or and maybe with some other police department or anything?
First of all, feel free to contact my office. My number is 601-321-9540. Be more than happy to talk to people and advise them of their options, whether that be to file a lawsuit or some other options that they may have. Secondly, in particular, take detailed notes as soon as possible after the incident has occurred, because memories fade with time. You don't want to lose out on details. If there's any physical evidence, then, if there's medical records, please gather those so that you can have them handy. If an officer beats you and it requires you to seek medical attention, then immediately go seek that medical attention. And don't be shy about telling the doctor, the officer beat me, that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that can be recorded in the medical record.
Okay. Now, how do you quantify a situation like this in damages?
Well, we sued and asked in the Jenkins and Parker case, we asked for $400 million.
Okay.
Number one, because of the historic nature of the case. And number two, if we're being honest, if this happened to any one of us, what kind of money is sufficient to compensate us for this? Michael Jenkins is paralyzed partially. He's not able to speak the way that he used to speak.
Wow.
Both of them are suffering psychological damages from this, in terms of their ability to even get a good night's sleep, without waking up in a cold sweat and things of that nature. So, then you're talking about ongoing medical bills. You're talking about Michael has had to have several surgeries, and there may very well be surgeries that are necessary in the future. So that's the amount of money we asked for. And if you think that's a crazy amount of money, think how crazy this situation is.
Right.
Yeah. And we don't make any apologies for it.
Right.
That's right.
That's what we're asking for. And,
and
somebody needs to pay.
it.
And if we're being honest, what we don't want to have happen is a situation where you're able to get rid of these 6 officers, hire 6 more that look just like them, and go back to doing things the way that you were doing the day before this case happened. What we want to do is be able to effectuate real change. And one of the ways to be able to effectuate that is, be able to hit these officers and the county in the pocketbook, so that there will be some policy decisions made that this is no longer the way that we're able to do business.
Right.
We've been doing this for over a century.
Right.
Because I'm a native of Rankin County. I didn't say that to start with.
Right.
I was born and raised there. I graduated from Pearl High School in 1986.
Okay.
To give away my age. So yeah, I can sit here and tell you.
People are scared to go through Rankin County.
People, people who don't live there don't want to go over there.
Yeah.
Right.
And, you tiptoe in a situation where you shouldn't have to.
Right.
You should be able to be a law-abiding citizen
And
not worry about have to go through any kind of gauntlet in order to go about, your life. Right. Or if you are doing something that is really a misdemeanor, if you're pulling me over for a ticket, please give me a ticket and let me go on about my business.
Right.
But what we're finding out is that there have been a lot of violations, a lot of, we're the law because we say we're in the law. I go back to that 38 years that Michael would have been eligible to receive if this had gone to court. Let's think about this. If you go to court and it's Michael's word versus the word of the officer,
they're gonna take the officers.
And you in court, who's gonna believe Michael Jenkins?
Right.
That's right. So the officer comes in and says, "This is what happened," and Michael says, "No, they set me up and they planted these drugs. We didn't have any drugs." They say, "Hey, here's the drugs that we found on him. I promise I got these out of his pocket."
Right.
Okay, and he's it's my word versus your word. Right. I can just about guarantee you that there have been few, if any, cases where in Rankin County they took the word of the defendant over the word of the officer.
That's terrible.
Is this a personal situation for you?
Yes, because as I said, I'm a native of Rankin County.
Right.
But it is not so personal that I can't put aside the fact that I'm from there and I do want to effectuate change, for myself and my family, even though I don't reside in Rankin County. Okay. But my family does. Right. So I certainly want to effectuate change. I want to basically change the way that officers deal with black people so that we can stop using phrases like "get back to your side of the river." Yeah. But that's offensive to me because I'm actually from that side of the river.
Right.
I'm from Rankin County. So if you see me and you don't know me and you saying stuff like "get back to your side of the river," this is my side of the river. Right. Because this is, my family been in Rankin County since 1876.
Wow.
I can promise you that.
Okay.
That's beautiful history.
I can take you and show you the headstones to prove it.
Right. Okay.
So, I don't want nobody talking about get on your side of the river, because
you've been on that side of the river.
Yeah, because I'm from that side of the river.
Yeah. All right, man, we definitely appreciate you stopping by, man, to the 748 podcast. Listen, man, y'all like, click, and subscribe that page. And listen, if you want to hear some great old school hip hop, man, download our app, B-Day 99.1. It's the 748 podcast with Gerold Girbeau, Bottlepopper, DJ Phingaprint, and of course, Trent Walker, man. Y'all keep it locked to us.
Urban City Podcast.